The hag is astride, this night for to ride, the devil and she together, through thick and through thin, now out and then in, though ne'er so foul be the weather. A thorn or a burr she takes for a spur, with a lash of bramble she rides now, through brakes and through briars, o'er ditches and mires, she follows the spirit that guides now. No beast for his food dares now range the wood, but hushed in his lair he lies lurking, while mischiefs by these, on land and on seas, at none of night are working. The storm will arise and trouble the skies this night, and more for the wonder, the ghost from the tomb affrighted shall come, called out by the clap of the thunder. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Day 5 of my Fortnight of Fright. That was The Hag by Robert Herrick. It was written not quite the middle of the 17th century in 1648. I did a bit of research when I decided that The Hag was definitely something I wanted to use today, and there is both a lot and not a lot to be said about the author, because, well, generally he was sort of dismissed as a minor poet in his time, and then he was almost entirely forgotten, but then he came back. So we have a lot of historical details about him, but there wasn't a lot of critical commentary on him at the time. However, a lot of modern people looking back say, hey, this guy is flawless, and I think The Hag is a poem that demonstrates real skill in terms of writing and making things flawless. While looking up things that people have said about him, I actually learned the word scansion. Have you ever heard about the feat of poetry? Like, the feat of poetry is like the kind of lilting of the beat of it. And if you've ever heard of the phrase iambic pentameter, well, in iambic pentameter, you have 5 iambic feet, and the scansion is kind of the measure of the beat. I don't really understand it that well myself, but they said that his scansion is flawless, and, you know, it's like, I think that it was more apparent when I was reciting it than it was when I was just reading it in my head to myself. It just flowed really well. There's a few reasons why I picked this poem. For one thing, and they're kind of related to each other, for one thing, I have to pick older poems for this. I'm sure there are many modern authors who would say, okay, yeah, you can use my poem, I don't care. But I kind of have a deadline, so I can't, like, call up people and say, hey, could I use this thing you wrote for a weird YouTube project? That's just not practical. So I have to look back at older works. And one of the good things about The Hag is that it was written at a time that's old enough that it's public domain. I don't remember exactly where the line is. I want to say that it's, if you get to the death of the author who wrote it and then go 75 years, then it's public domain. I don't know that that's right, but that's what I have in my head. So a lot of these people I've had to look up. Like, when I started it off with, what was night 1 of the Fortnight of Fright? It was that one poem by that one guy, Little Orphan Tanny. I started with Little Orphan Tanny by James Whitcomb Riley. I was looking up, is this one actually public domain? When did he die? Was his death a factor? I found some confirmation that he was public domain, so I used him. For this one, though, if it's written in 1648, it's public domain by now. It's fine. The other reason I liked it, apart from it being in public domain, is that the way it's written, stylistically, feels modern. There are some ways of phrasing things that are atypical for how we would say them, and if you actually read the poem, there are some things that are spelled differently. I wasn't sure if I should have pronounced one or two of them differently. Like, there's one word that was like Noone. I was pretty sure he meant none, but given the context of referring to nighttime, I thought, like, ooh, the noon of the night. You mean midnight? Does noon of the night mean midnight? I went with none, though, because that also made sense to me as a possibility. But if he did mean none of the nighttime, that noon of the nighttime, that's kind of awesome, though. Midnight. Night times noon. So it feels modern. More specifically, it has a cadence and structure to it that is very similar to one of my favorite modern Halloween poems, and that is a song from The Nightmare Before Christmas. And that song is when Jack Skellington is describing Santa Claus and Christmas to all the people of Halloween Town. When he gets towards the part where he's actually discussing Santa, some of the cadences remind me. Some of the cadences in the Hag remind me of the way that Jack Skellington said what he had to say. Like, and the best, I confess, I have saved for the last, for the ruler of this Christmas land. Again, I shouldn't go into more than that because it's public domain. Like, they don't care. I'm sure they don't care. I'm sure that they would be fine. But by the same token, I'm going to avoid that. Another issue brought up by the Hag is an issue of it's an odd issue because when it says the Hag, it also refers to we of course think of witches, and the typical witch that we think of, on Halloween is, kind of an angry old lady on a broomstick who rides around in the sky casting spells. There are, of course, people nowadays who refer to themselves as witches. They're Wiccans. And they have this as a part of their own belief system. And, every once in a while when you look at some of these classic images of cackling witches, you have to ask, is it okay to refer to witches if people nowadays have referred to it that way? And I've heard disagreement on that topic. I think it's okay, but then again, it's something that I don't want to just assume is fine. Just because I have some Wiccan friends who are okay with it doesn't mean that all Wiccans would be okay with it. So, I don't know. I like the webcomic PvP, when PvP had introduced a character who was a witch, and when someone said, "You mean you're a Wiccan?" I said, "No, I'm not a Wiccan. I'm a witch. I cast spells. I cackle a lot, and I do not actually follow Wiccan beliefs or practice." So PvP acknowledged it, but still it kind of had its cake and ate it too. Having said that, it is still a staple of what is often seen at Halloween, and it is an old great poem, so I felt I should probably mention it. I should probably include this poem. So anyway, my own questions about political correctness and what's okay aside, I again think that the style and structure of what's written here is really nice, and I look forward to reading something else tomorrow. So until then, stay scared, everyone, for even more of the Fortnight of Fright.